far we're willing to go.
All right. Dr. Troughton, did you hear that?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Well, Steve would prefer that you make your presentation,
Yeah,
because then he said that we'd have a better idea of what kind of number to look for.
Please, let Dr. Troughton speak.
I'm gonna go up over here, if that's okay.
Do you have a?
I don't have an overhead. I
Oh,
do
okay.
have one handout, and I'm passing it around to the board. There should be one
Thank you.
for the press.
There you go, press.
And I think those can go out to the audience. So
I do have a slide on there of the list of employees, if that would help you.
that would help, right?
I didn't get, is there?
Bob's got some. Bob's got one for you. Yeah, he's got some.
That's all right. That's all right.
Okay, I have a few extra copies here. Here's one more.
Okay, does the Board of Selectmen have the handout? The handout that I'm referring to is a pyramid. And I apologize if everyone in the audience does not have a copy. I will certainly have other copies available, but if you can share, that would be helpful. I'm David Troughton. I'm Superintendent of Schools here in North Reading. And I want to thank first of all, the Board of Selectmen for inviting us here tonight, and also for the ongoing dialogue that we've had with our finance planning team, and also the work with the Finance Committee, who are also represented on that finance planning team. And we also, the school department also presented to the Finance Committee last week. Tremendous work in terms of getting to where we are tonight in terms of the budget. And also a parent organization, North Reading United for Education, has been very helpful in helping to have conversations and have discussions about priorities in the budget. My job tonight is to lay out for the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee and the community the priorities of the school department as it goes forward into the FY09 budget. We're very grateful for the support from the Board of Selectmen to close the gap, and to work toward closing the gap between the available funds projected for next year in the FY09 budget and what the school department and school committee believe is the status quo, the basic amount of money that would carry the school district forward next year under the same conditions. When I say same conditions, I'm talking about no changes in the amount of time that we're providing instruction, no changes in terms of the impact of high class sizes at our middle school and high school, no changes in terms of the elimination of band and chorus, and major reductions in fine arts, including music and art, no changes in physical education and the reductions that have occurred this year, no changes in the closing partially of our elementary libraries and computer labs, no changes to the elimination of a middle school librarian this year and the staffing of that facility with an aide. No changes in anything that has occurred this year. It's been a very challenging year, not only for the schools, but particularly for our students and our teachers. So as I think about the recommendations that I've made to the school committee, my job is to make a commitment to build a foundation for education in North Reading. North Reading has a long history of providing a quality education within the boundaries of the resources that have been provided by the community. I'm not proud to announce or talk about a statistic that positions North Reading at 13th from the bottom in FY06 for expenditures on education and on a per pupil basis. But I am very proud of the quality of education and the hard work and dedication of all of our teachers and paraprofessionals and every other staff member in the district. At the same time, while we are concerned, we talk about the quality as superintendent of schools, I am concerned about what the future holds. And while the school committee and the school department have made every effort over the last number of years, since the last override 4 years ago, to sustain that quality, we have witnessed continued erosion in the staffing. And that's beginning to take its toll in many ways, sometimes in measurable ways, such as the 18% of our 8th graders that go on to leave our schools and do not go on to North Reading High School. That's the highest percentage in my recollection, and I've been superintendent for 14 years. That's a tremendous increase over where it's been in the past, and I'm concerned about that. What does the future hold? In a day and age when our high school students are finding it even more and more competitive to get into colleges and universities and to become further educated for their lifelong endeavors, whatever they might be. Other indicators of where we are not performing and we're not improving at the level that I think is critical for the students in North Reading in the MCAS. Well, for many years, we've been very pleased with the results of our students. It's not acceptable to have 30% of our 3rd graders achieving at just above the warning or failing mark. Needs improvement. That's not a goal. We need to take those students and we need to move them to proficiency and we need to move them to advanced level. So that's a stagnation, if not a decline, in terms of where our students compare to students in other districts, not just throughout the Commonwealth, but as I look particularly around the closer circle of communities around North Reading, whether it's Linfield or Andover, Wilmington, or Reading, I am deeply concerned about that. So as I think about working with our administrative team, and tonight I've asked our high school principal, John Bernard, and one of our elementary principals, Sean Colleen, to join me should there be any questions that come up about some of the budget numbers. But I will tell you that all of the administrative staff has worked diligently to focus on the entire school district. I make it my direct goal to the administrative team that I'm not looking for principals who are going to be championing only their school. Because if that's what ends up happening, we end up conflicting and competing, and then all students in the long run lose. So the recommended budget that the school committee has approved is $870,000 above the status quo budget. And it includes a series of positions that I feel, and the administrative staff feels very strongly, need to be in place to not just move our district forward, but to reconstruct, to rebuild, to repair the confidence in the level of education that North Reading students deserve and North Reading students have had and enjoyed decades. However, I understand, and I know the administrative staff understands, and I know the school committee clearly understands that $870,000 is a huge number. And it's particularly a large number in a day and age when finances and economics are extremely challenging, not just in North Reading, but in individual households and families all over. So therefore, we have come with these recommendations in a level of priority after very careful thought deliberation with professionals whose job and career is to really focus on education and making sure that every student has a chance to be successful. And I know this year, in June and over the summer, and as we open school in September, some very difficult changes were made. We're sending our students home early on Wednesday afternoon. We have middle school youngsters who are not fully engaged in learning. We call them study halls or academic seminars, as Mr. Hodges, our middle school principal, has tried to put a positive spin. But make no mistake, it's not direct instruction where you're working and engaged directly with a teacher in math and science and art and fine arts or anything. It's working on homework, and that homework is to be done at home. So the priorities that I'm going to put out, and they're not articulated in the sheet that you see on the board, but they are explained very clearly in the pyramid. And also on the flip side, you can see the details in terms of the cost. But I come before the Board of Selectmen tonight to really plead the case that the $870,000 absolutely is needed to build this pyramid. This is not building a pyramid that is reaching to the sky. It's not a pyramid that is adding a lot of programs that I think I like to have lots of conversations about with our administrative staff, with teaching staff. We're not talking about world languages that we like to add and feel that it's necessary. We're not talking about a lot of new programs. We're talking about building a foundation. And that foundation begins with the support of the status quo. And I believe that's been or will be achieved. In priority then, after much careful and deliberate discussions, the first priority for the school department and for the superintendent and for the administrative staff is to be sure that we are addressing the basic fundamental educational needs of our students in reading. That's where it needs to begin. We can't do that in the elementary school if we're not shifting, and I talk about MCAS, for anyone who doesn't understand it, is the primary indicator of student achievement. It's what the state has set as the accountability. It's what our kids are measured on, starting in the 3rd grade. And it's measured on 4 levels: in the elementary school, warning, needs improvement, proficient, and advanced. And under the federal law of No Child Left Behind, all children, 100% of the children in North Reading and in every city and town in this entire nation needs to show proficiency, at least proficiency in reading, or what's called English language arts, mathematics, and science. Those are the 3 cores. And there are some school districts that are only building their education around those 3 cores. We think it's important to go beyond that, and we're going to have some conversation about that. But you have to start with reading. And 30% of our 3rd graders are in that needs improvement category. They need to be in proficient. So we have a lot of work to do. And that's why we're recommending in that first category of prioritization, focusing on elementary reading. It needs to have support. Secondly, and tied directly to the reading, is the need to continue to support inclusion and special education. We have worked very hard to bring and keep students in our schools. Students who have diverse learning needs and have an educational plan can go out of the district. And that causes great cost above and beyond. And we're trying to keep those students here. And we feel that it is essential, in order to continue on that pathway, to move those students to proficiency, that we need to focus on basic needs. And that's why we're requesting additional teachers at the elementary level to support special education. High school. 18% of our students in North Reading chose not to go to North Reading High School next year. I know that John Bernard will jump up and down and tell you that North Reading High School is a wonderful place. It is a very caring facility and school. It's a place where